So, I shared a few articles that, a lot of people probably didn't know those incidents happened, you know, and considering the factor too of how long they had been basically buried because they were trying to, basically, the Department of Defense was trying to do everything that they could to keep those articles from going ahead and surfacing and becoming public attention, especially with, some irregularities when it comes to, budget, as well as, payouts of claims. Basically, certain branches and certain roles going ahead and receiving their benefits before others. Like, for example, anybody that ended up going through an ROTC program, basically military school, in comparison to someone who actually actively deployed, the difference in not only the amount of benefits, end up going ahead and being different, but as well as, requirements, as well as, it seems like there's a preferential treatment when it comes to the processing of paperwork. So I'm going to tell the story of basically what ended up happening. Alright, so after I ended up getting out of that group home, I had quite a few friends that ended up going ahead, enlisting and deploying. And, I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and go the Job Corps route, do the whole ROTC thing because of the factor that ultimately I was like, hey, if you go ahead and do that, as far as your, record, as far as everything that ended up happening that led up to you even end up, being over there, on base and all that, having to go ahead and basically be numerous different, veterans bitch boy. We'll go ahead and we'll turn a blind eye to all the shit that happened, but you're going to have to go ahead and, learn rules of engagement. You're going to have to go ahead and learn, the actual policies are as far as, ethics, what's allowed, what's not allowed. The funny thing is, I wasn't the one who put myself in that position. Basically, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, either 6 or 7 different people when it came to different branches from different locations that in the process of, that ended up going ahead and basically because of the factor that in their mind they saw it as a prank, especially understanding that I wasn't exactly in favor of the way things were handled as far as deployment and George Bush's administration, and recognizing and seeing through what is now, the general consensus as far as the war crimes and, the actual, like reason for deployment, the weaponization of, threats to national security, and, overall, different human rights violations that ended up being committed to them. Well, those people, I don't know whether it was they saw it as a prank or they ended up going ahead and it was just them wanting to, be greedy as far as that sign-on bonus. But they ended up committing recruitment fraud. Now, keep in mind, when it comes to one of them specifically, they ended up going ahead and getting dishonorably discharged, or could have ended up dishonorably discharged with the circumstance that ended up happening. Because it seems like they were kind of the ringleader in the whole situation. Now, they were pissed off because they had told me that them and their ex broke up. Me and their ex ended up hooking up, and, they're pretty upset about it. Now, keep in mind, it was pretty misleading in general. But they ended up going ahead and getting caught driving some, Department of Defense vehicles while actively smoking. Ultimately, basically when I ended up getting locked up, I kind of ended up taking the heat for some of what they had gotten in trouble for, because of the factor that ultimately, because of that specific blocking, as far as the scheduling on marijuana. If they would have ended up having to take all the heat for that, they would have ended up getting dishonorably discharged. They wouldn't have been able to finish out their time. And, ultimately, if it would have gotten found out about that recruitment fraud, basically their entire career would have gone down in flames. So, honestly, the luckiest thing that ended up happening to them was that whole incident of the missing files, with the National Archives. Alright? When it comes down to those files, it seems like there are a lot of people when it comes to people that there were investigations that ended up leading to the incident at Fort Polk, with the child pornography. When it comes down to a lot of, discrimination when it comes to recruitment, a lot of the what's now known as far as the white supremacist, within the ranks of the military, as far as gang activity, a lot of things are coming to the surface. But there's a lot of skeletons coming to, basically coming out from people's past. And keep in mind, these are circumstances that ultimately, when it comes to higher ups, as far as, people in leadership positions, some of their unethical maneuvering is starting to surface. And considering the circumstances, as far as it seeming like it's a powder keg, and, Tommy Tuberville going ahead and blocking promotions, it's... all I could say is this is a dangerous time. It really is. But I feel like it can't be understated a lot of similarities there are about circumstances of not being able to come to a ceasefire and actually be able to come to negotiations, humanitarian aid, resources getting blocked, as pretty much a reprimand, um, basically the discriminatory and faction mentality that's coming along with the whole circumstance. There seems to be a lot of similarities to what's going on right now in 2023, as there was the lead up to the wars between Iraq and Afghanistan, and those files that went missing from the National Archives. There's I can't shake the suspicion that there's a connection between those files that ended up going missing at the National Archives, the hazing incident that basically ended up happening through the last 20 years now, as well as the Fort Polk child pornography, shakedown, that and major bust, and a lot of misappropriations there ended up being with pharmaceutical companies that would make direct medications for Veterans Affairs. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave this to go ahead and put those correlations together. But I shared those articles on my Facebook for a reason.